master's disciples went to buy bread, but he stayed at the well on that day.
And a woman got more than she came there for. It's as if I can hear her say, because she stayed, I've been delivered. One more prisoner is free. Because he stayed, I've been forgiven. He's made a new person of me. What a great transformation, what sweet salvation, what hope and healing he gave. And I'm not the same since Jesus came, and I'm singing because he stayed.
He climbed the hill to the old wooden cross, but he could have refused it that day.
He stayed there for me, no, he wouldn't leave till the price of my sin was paid.
Because he stayed, I've been delivered. One more prisoner is free. Because he stayed, I've been forgiven. He's made a new person of me. What a great transformation, what sweet salvation, what hope and healing he gave. And I'm not the same since Jesus came, and I'm singing because he stayed. Because he stayed, I've been delivered. One more prisoner is free. Because he stayed, I've been forgiven. He's made a new person of me. What a great transformation, what sweet salvation, what hope and healing he gave. And I'm not the same since Jesus came, and I'm singing because he stayed. And I'm not the same since Jesus came, and I'm singing because he stayed. Okay, good morning, everybody, and welcome to our morning service. Let's go ahead and stand as we turn to page 443. Please stand with me and turn to page 441. 441, Sunlight. I wandered in the shades of night till Jesus came to me, and with the sunlight of his love bid all my darkness flee. Sunlight, sunlight in my soul today. Sunlight, sunlight all along the way. Since the Savior found me, took away my sin, I have had the sunlight of his love within. No clouds and billows round me roll. However dark the world may be, I've sunlight in my soul. Sunlight, sunlight in my soul today. Sunlight, sunlight all along the way. Since the Savior found me, took away my sin, I have had the sunlight of his love within. While walking in the light of God, I sweet and find. I press with holy vigor on and leave the world behind. Sunlight, sunlight in my soul today. Sunlight, sunlight all along the way. Since the Savior found me, took away my sin, I have had the sunlight of his love within. On that last verse. The light that came for me, behold the brightness of his face throughout eternity. Sunlight, sunlight in my soul today. Sunlight, sunlight all along the way. Since the Savior found me, took away my sin, I have had the sunlight of his love within.
Amen. Well, I picked that song because, it is daylight savings time today. And I thought, well, we need to sing about sunlight since we got more of it. We really don't have any more of it. We just lost an hour of sleep to get more, seemingly. But we're glad you're here today. Man, I am shocked to see Val here. Miss Katie, I can't believe you let him out of the house. Doing good? You doing good, Val? Okay, Val had a pacemaker replaced on Friday, and got Energizer Bunny all going in there and ready to go. And we're glad you're here this morning. Fernando, lead us in prayer if you would.
Oh, dear Heavenly Father, we thank you once again for the glory of the opportunity to be in your house, Lord Jesus. We only pray that we all listen to the pastor's message and it takes to heart, and we take it and pass this building out there and help others come in this house. Be with the ones that are here and be the ones that cannot be here, Lord Jesus. We ask you to bless us in all the things we do. In Jesus' name.
All right, be seated and get your bulletins out while I get mine. I forgot mine over here. I don't know about you, but I'm really missing that hour this morning. We should have had double shot espresso day or something. All right, we got a safety security meeting tonight for those who completed those assessments that we asked to help us with. Please plan on staying after the service this evening. We're going to get started on kind of going through some of that, getting together an action plan, and based on your feedback and discussion, we're not going to have a long meeting, but we'll begin the process tonight. And so we won't hold you here till midnight because we know it's been a long day already. And we'll get you out as soon as we can. Small town outreach, upcoming schedule for that is as follows. Packet stuffing night on Friday, March 27th at 6:30 p.m. That's a Friday night. We're going to put together some packets of material. And then Chowchilla outreach is going to begin on Saturday, March 28th at 10 o'clock a.m. I have had a burden for Chowchilla for a long, long time. Really, I'll be honest, when my brother-in-law was working here at the church and was going to go out and start a church, I really wanted him to go to Chowchilla and start a church. And I just have a burden for that city. And we're going to go down there and we're going to knock on some doors and we're going to share the gospel. And we're going to pray maybe the Lord will raise a church there. And if I have to drive back and forth and pastor two churches until we can find somebody to take that, then so be it. But I'd love to see the Lord plant a church there and just get something going. And so we're going to start Chowchilla March 28th, 10 o'clock a.m. I'll tell you, we'll probably meet down there, and I'll tell you where when we get some more plans finalized with that in the next week or so. And we hope that even if you can't go out there with us, if you can help us put together some of those packets, that'd be a great blessing. And that just takes a lot of hands. And so we need all the help that we can get with that. And if you would like to go with us, have one of our outreach shirts. If you'd like one of those, I think we still have some of those available. We just found that that's effective, especially when we're going into these communities, that we all kind of have a same shirt on, and people know, man, the last time we went to LeGrand, the Jehovah's Witnesses saw that blue crew get out with our bright blue shirts, and they took off. And that's like the first time that's ever happened. Usually they follow in behind us. But they saw us Army get out, and they said, well, we're out of here. And so it's effective, and we want to keep to that. And so if you need one of those shirts, let us know. And then I just want to put a word in on our summer camps. They're going to be coming up quicker than you think. And we don't have maybe as many teenagers going as in previous years, but we still have some in our teen group that we want to go. And I want to encourage you parents to encourage your teenagers to go. And we're going to be talking about how to pay for that here in the next few weeks, but I want you to just begin thinking about that. And then our annual family camp is going to be held July 30th, 31st, and August 1st. And I encourage you, begin setting aside money. Or better yet, begin going ahead paying for family camp. And if you've never been to family camp, you ought to go. We had a great time last year, and I hope to have a great time again this year. And so we want you to go. And remember, I think they got that RV out there. If somebody wanted to rent that, you better tell us soon on that so that we can reserve that for you. All right, let's have the ushers come, and we'll get ready to receive our offering today. Everybody's quiet. Listen to how quiet you are. Everybody's asleep. Omar, can you take mine? Thank you. Adam, pray for the offering, if you would.
All right, everybody, let's go ahead and stand one more time. Well, we're going to keep standing. Let's turn to page 361. Page 361, Heavenly Sunlight. In the sunlight, all of my journey, over the mountains, through the deep vale, Jesus has said, I'll never forsake thee, promise divine that never can fail. Heavenly sunlight, flooding my soul with glory divine. Hallelujah, I am rejoicing, singing His praises. Jesus is mine. Shadows around me, shadows above me, never conceal my Savior and guide. He is the light, in Him is no darkness. Ever I'm walking close to His side. Heavenly sunlight, flooding my soul with glory divine. Hallelujah, I am rejoicing, singing His praises. Jesus is mine. In the bright sunlight, ever rejoicing, pressing my way to mansions above, singing His praises. Gladly I'm walking in sunlight of love. Heavenly sunlight, flooding my soul with glory divine. Hallelujah, I am rejoicing, singing His praises. Jesus is mine.
All right, we're getting ready to sing our fellowship song. And I know there's a lot of concern out there. There's panic going on over at Costco this morning, even probably. People are looking for where's my water bottle at? It got disappeared. Where did it go? Somebody took it away. There's panic going on with water bottle and all that kind of stuff. So here's what I'm going to tell you to do. If you don't feel good, don't come to church, first of all. If you're coughing, you feel like you think I just got a cold, well, it may not be just a cold. And so be cautious. Don't come to church. Now I'm a pastor, and I'm telling you, if you don't come to church, so I'm really, I'm serious about this. But when it comes to fellowship, I feel like this: we got to live out of faith and not fear. And, we can't be people of, God has not given us a spirit of fear. And so do this. If you don't feel comfortable shaking hands, bump fists, rub elbows, don't touch noses. That's probably not a good idea. But do one of those three things: shake hands, bump fists, rub elbows, whatever you feel comfortable doing. But we're going to sing our time of fellowship right now. And at that fellowship time, you can do whatever you feel comfortable doing, okay?
All right, our last song on page 70. Page 70, The Unclouded Day. Oh, they tell me of a home far beyond the skies. Oh, they tell me of a home far away. Oh, they tell me of a home where no storm clouds rise. Oh, they tell me of an uncloudy day. Oh, the land of cloudless days. Oh, the land of an uncloudy day. Oh, they tell me of a home where no storm clouds rise. Oh, they tell me of an uncloudy day. On that third verse. Oh, they tell me of a king in his beauty there. Oh, they tell me that mine eye shall behold, where he sits on the throne that is whiter than snow, in that city that is made of gold. Oh, the land of cloudless day. Oh, the land of an uncloudy day. Oh, they tell me of a home where no storm clouds rise. Oh, they tell me of an uncloudy day. Oh, they tell me that he smiles on his children there, and his smile drives their sorrows all away. And they tell me that no tears ever come again in that lovely land of uncloudy day. Oh, the land of cloudless day. Oh, the land of an uncloudy day. Oh, they tell me of a home where no storm clouds rise. Oh, they tell me of an unclouded day. Go ahead and turn around and shake hands.
to suffer willingly, because he loved us so. Love let him go. Love led him to a garden where alone he wept and prayed, for he knew his final love was at hand. Though his father could have saved him, he chose to turn away, because there had to be a sacrifice for man. Love let him go. Love let him walk alone. Love let him live as God. So will the world know. Love let him go. Today on Calvary, to suffer willingly, because he loved us so. Love let him go. And death could have held him in the grave, but Jesus broke the chains of sin, and on the third day, love let him go. Love rolled the stone away. The sacrifice was made, so all the world would know. Love let him go. But he'll come back again to take us home with him, because he loved us so. Love let him go. Love let him go.
Thank you, Portia. That was a beautiful song. Beautiful message in that song, isn't it? Let's turn our Bibles to Genesis chapter number 25. Genesis chapter number 25 this morning. Imagine being saddled with a terrible legacy. Just suppose that you were born the son of Benedict Arnold. Or what if your dad was a terrorist or a serial killer or a mass murderer and you bore that last name? I mean, what if it was Don Bundy, the son of Ted Bundy here this morning? That would be a terrible legacy to deal with, wouldn't it? I mean, what would most people do in that instance? What they would most people would probably do is try and change their name and run away from that legacy as far as possible. They didn't necessarily create that legacy, but we all, in some way or another, have a legacy that's handed down to us, whether we like it or not. You, for most of your life, were known as your parents' child. And their legacy follows you. And your legacy will follow your children. And so we all have legacies that are handed down and passed down to us. But how do you break with a bad legacy? How do you break away from that? What if you have been given a terrible legacy that's been handed down to you? How do you overcome that? How do you get away from that? Well, to answer that question, we're going to look at Abraham's grandson named Jacob. The Bible says here in Genesis 25, verse number 26, and after that came his brother out and his hand took hold of Esau's heel, and his name was called Jacob. Now Isaac was 80 years old when she bare them. And so here Jacob and Esau are twin brothers. Esau was born first, but even as he was being born, little Jacob reached up and was holding a hold of his brother's heel and grabbing a hold of it as he's coming out of the womb. And so they decided to give him a name. And names in Bible times meant something. Most often people lived up to, or in this case, lived down to their names. Now, how would you like to be given the name supplanter? Because that's what the word Jacob means. It means to overthrow, to undermine, to trip up, to trick, to usurp. It basically means liar, deceiver, trickster. How would you like that to be your name? That's what you have to live up with the rest of your life. Hey, liar, how you doing? Hey, deceiver, what's going on? Because that's what Jacob meant. And that was what he was called. Now, that's not a pleasant description to live up with, and that's quite a legacy to be saddled with as a child. So how does a person overcome such a legacy? Well, we're going to take briefly a journey through Jacob's life this morning and see how he came to overcome being saddled with such a bad legacy. I want you to see, first of all, it was a correct description. He really was what he was named. Though things did not start out well for Jacob in his life, we see that in his life he lived up to be Jacob. He lived up to be supplanter. And the age-old question with that comes to mind, was that a product of nature or was that a product of nurture? Well, let's look here in our Bibles. I want you to see first of all, Jacob did have an inherited nature. An inherited nature. Look at verse number 23. And the Lord said unto her, talking about Rebekah, 2 nations are in thy womb, and 2 manner of people shall be separated from thy bowels. And the one people shall be stronger than the other people, and the elder shall serve the younger. God, even before Jacob and Esau are being born, has already said, look, this is the way it's going to go. It's not going to go the way that it normally goes in society, especially at this time. In society at this time, everything went to the eldest child, even if it was twins. You say, well, they were just born seconds or minutes apart. It didn't matter. Esau was born first. And as being born first, he had certain privileges and obligations and blessings that would be bestowed upon him that would not be bestowed upon Jacob. And God says, look, before these boys are even born, I'm going to tell you, it's not going to go that way. It's not going to happen the way that it normally happens in society. Yes, both boys are going to be blessed, and both boys are going to produce nations of people. But one nation is going to be stronger than the other nation. And unlike the rest of society and the rest of how things normally go, in this case, the elder is going to serve the younger. It's the younger one that is going to be the stronger one. He's the one that's going to be the most blessed. He's the one that's going to come into these things. He's going to be stronger. He would prosper by any means necessary. And in the end, the younger would dominate the elder. Now, we just shrug our shoulders and say, Jacob was just living up to his nature. So when he stole his brother's blessing, when he manipulated and undermined his brother and robbed him of his birthright. That was just Jacob living up to Jacob's nature. God had already predicted that this was going to happen. And Jacob was just who God made him to be. God just made him to be this, and this was his nature, and this is how he did things. And so we can excuse the actions of Jacob's life as being just a product of his nature, that this is just who he was. Even from his birth, look, he's grabbing a hold of the heel, and he says, wait a minute, Esau, you're not going to get the best of me. I'm not going to let go, and you're not going to be stronger than me. I'm going to be stronger than you. We see that right even from his birth. And there are a great many things about your life that is just a product of your nature. That you didn't really have to be taught them. You didn't have to learn them. They're just who you are. You know, the truth is, nobody ever had to teach you to lie. I doubt the majority of your parents ever set you down. Now, listen, I'm going to teach you today how to lie and deceive people. I doubt any of your parents did that with you. But there is not one person in this room this morning that hasn't told a lie. And if you say, I have never told a lie, you're lying right now. All of us are born natural liars. We will take the easy path when confronted with wrongdoing, even if that easy path sometimes means lying about it. And so we have these natural tendencies. And all of us has just things that are a part of our nature. Some things are good, but a lot of things are bad that are part of our nature. Most people are lazy. They are. They'll do as little as possible. And they'll live off of others, and they won't be industrious, and they won't be hard workers, and they will just do as little as they need to do to get by, and that's just part of their nature. They're just lazy by nature. And Jacob had a lot of things that was just natural to him. It was just the way he was. Now, we want to blame God for that. God, you made me a liar. God, you made me this way. No, God didn't make you a liar. Adam made you a liar. By one man's sin entered into the world, and death by sin, so that now death has been passed on to all men. You are saddled with a terrible legacy of a fallen nature. You have a sinful nature. Listen, most people, if you ask most people about sin, this is what they think. And I was a pretty good person. I was living a pretty good life. And then one day I sinned and I became a sinner. And I messed up. But surely God won't hold me accountable for that one time that I messed up. That's not how it happened at all. You were not a pretty good person, living a pretty good life. You were a sinner by nature, by birth. That's who you are. You didn't sin and become a sinner. You were born a sinner and you sin because you are a sinner. You say, what about you? Me too. I'm in the same boat as you. I was born a sinner. I don't always say things the right way. I don't always have the right attitude about things. I do wrong. I mess up. I make mistakes. I have an evil part of my nature that is fallen that I wish I didn't have, and it's just natural. It's a part of my nature. I didn't get that from God. I inherited that from my father Adam. And far too often, we just give in to our fallen nature. Those base instincts, those wrong inclinations, wrong desires, we just give up and we shrug our shoulders and throw up our hands and say, well, that's just how I am. You ever heard somebody when they blow their stack? And then you say, listen, you shouldn't have got so angry. Well, that's just how I am. I blow off steam, and if you don't like it, So bad. It's too bad for you. That's not the right attitude to have. Just because that's your natural tendency doesn't mean it's right. And doesn't mean that you can excuse it. Jacob's natural tendency was to trick people. His natural tendency was to undermine people, to rob people, to take from them by any means necessary. That was his natural tendency. It did not make it right. God never makes us sinners. We're born sinners because of an inherited nature. Stubborn, rebellious, prideful, jealous sinners. We're self-willed and selfish. Every last one of us. You say, oh, me, not me. I'm not self-willed and selfish. Yes, you are. And it is a terrible legacy. Listen, that is a terrible legacy that has been passed down to us. I wish I wasn't that way. How many times I wish I wasn't selfish and self-centered? Only thinking about me. But that's the legacy that has been passed on to me. Now, I'm not excusing it. And I'm not saying that we can just shrug our shoulders and say, well, that's just how I am, and if you don't like it, get over it. I'm not saying that. I'm just speaking to you honestly. We have an inherited nature, just like Jacob did, that is fallen. But there was also some nurturing going on, too, in Jacob's life. There was an influential nurturing that was happening. Right from birth, Jacob had a natural tendency to want to get the advantage over his brother. That was right from birth. But there were some things going on in the home that encouraged that to happen. There were some things happening in the family that encouraged Jacob to try and do this. Look at a couple of these things this morning. First of all, there was some contrasting personalities going on. Verse number 27. The Bible says, and the boys grew, and Esau was a cunning hunter, a man of the field, and Jacob was a plain man dwelling in tents. These two boys couldn't have been more different than night and day. They were complete opposites. They had nothing in common. And the contrast of their personalities created friction between them, and it stirred up rivalry. There's always sibling rivalry, no matter, even if two people are alike. But the fact that these children were so different, that these young men were so different, it only stirred up more rivalry than normal. And it made Jacob want to take advantage over Esau. Here's what the Bible is saying. You say, well, I don't understand what this verse is really telling me. Well, let me explain it to you. The Bible says, as boys grew, Esau was a cunning hunter, a man of the field. His dad was a shepherd. His grandfather was a shepherd. Esau said, that's not the life for me. I don't want to be tied down with a flock of sheep. I want to live life on my terms. I want to come and go as I please. I want to do my own thing and live life the way I want to live it. I don't like the responsibility of having to stay at home and take care of the sheep and being responsible. I want to be out in the field and live it up. He loved the carousing life. He loved to carouse around. He was the wild man. He loved the wild life. He was irresponsible, unreliable, not dependable. He wanted to be free to do whatever he wanted to do, and when he wanted to hunt and he got hungry, he would hunt and kill something, eat it, and he wanted to live out in the field, out in the open. He didn't want to be shackled by obligations and responsibilities. The Bible says Jacob was just a plain man, dwelling in tents. That doesn't mean he was a mama's boy. That means he stayed at home and took care of his responsibilities. He was just an ordinary, average man who did what men are supposed to do. He worked a job and he did that job well, and he took care of his obligations. He took care of his responsibilities, and he stayed where he was supposed to stay, stayed at home taking care of mom and dad and the flocks and everything else there at the house. While Esau's out running around, doing whatever he wants to do. Well, this difference in personality, it made Jacob want to take advantage of Esau. He doesn't deserve the birthright. He doesn't deserve the blessing. He's out carousing around, gallivanting around, doing whatever he wants to do. I'm here taking care of mom and dad. I'm the one here taking care of the flocks. And he's going to get everything left to him when dad dies. It's all going to be handed to him, and he doesn't have any responsibility. He doesn't take care of things. Oh, this just stirred up some strife. So there's some things here in the environment and the dynamics of the home that is stirring up those fallen tendencies of Jacob's nature. See, we're not just a product of our nature. Our environment does play into who we are. Listen, don't get ahead of me. I'm not saying we can blame our poor choices and our sin on our environment. I'll get to that in a moment. But I am saying our environment does play into who we are as a person. It does nurture some of our fallen nature and our tendencies. Not only was there contrasting personalities, there was competing parents. Look at verse number 28. And Isaac loved Esau because he did eat of his venison like a man. The weight of his heart was through his stomach. He only loved him because of the soup that he made, the deer meat that he brought in. But Rebekah loved Jacob. Now, obviously, this favoritism was not hidden. It was known to everybody, including both boys. They knew Dad loved Esau and Mom loved Jacob. And there was favoritism and competition between parents going on in the house. Isaac's love for Esau only made Jacob more determined to one day have everything that Esau had. To get whatever Esau had coming to him, Jacob was only more determined, I'm going to get that. I'm going to have that. The tender affection of Rebekah did not curb Jacob's natural sinful nature. It encouraged it. Well, I know, son, he doesn't deserve that birthright. I know, Jacob, he doesn't deserve that blessing. I know he's not responsible, and he's out running around and not here helping at the house. And I know, son. And she placated and pacified and fed into all of that animosity and all of that friction. And these competing parents are pulling their kids apart. And you got to be careful you don't do that in your home. Yeah, you may have one child that's more like you than the other, and it's difficult, I know, sometimes to not divulge into that favoritism. But the environment of the home was certainly influencing Jacob's already fallen nature. And parents showing blatant favoritism is not helpful to curb our natural sinful tendency. It only stokes it. It only stirs it up more. In fact, we're going to see that Rebekah went further. She just didn't create an environment that encouraged it. She actually took in action and encouraged it. When Isaac is blind and getting ready to pass on the blessing, and he tells Esau, hey, go get me some of that venison that I love, and I'm going to give you my blessing. Rebekah hears that, and she tells Jacob, hey, now's our chance. Go dress up like Esau. Go act like Esau. go make some porridge and go into your dad and pretend to be Esau. Well, this is a mom that's just not placating his natural sinful tendency. She's encouraging it. Hey, go be a liar. Go be a deceiver. This is a messed up home. The environment of this home's not great. And you may be sitting here this morning and you say, well, I know I'm a sinner by birth. I don't want to be. But Pastor, you don't know my home, what it's like. You don't know how my wife treats me, or my husband treats me, or my parents treat me, or you don't know what I've been through in life. So we have two forces at play. We have a nature and a nurture. We have a nurturing influence that is prodding Jacob to live up to his sinful legacy. And it's really no different than our life. Our life has the same forces at play in our life. And we too were born with a terrible legacy, a legacy of failure and of sin. And we are ingrained with a sinful nature and a sinful disposition. And we live in a fallen world that is a terrible environment. You want to do right, and then everybody around you is encouraging you to do wrong. And it would be very easy just to throw up our hands and say, well, everybody else is doing it. And that's just the way it is today. But it doesn't make it right. To him that knoweth to do good and doeth it not, to him it is sin. And just because everybody else is doing it doesn't make something right. So are we the product? Are you the way you are this morning because of a fallen nature? Or because of an influential nurturing? Yes. And no. See, there's something else more important at play here. We all have a fallen nature. We all live in a fallen world. But don't underestimate the power of choice. You are what you are because you are the product of the choices that you make. You can blame it on your nature and you can blame it on your nurture. You can say, well, my mom and daddy mistreated me, and so that's why I'm a liar and a lazy, no good for nothing. You're going to use that excuse until you're 80? Or are you going to get over it and start making something of yourself? No man can control what other people do to him. No man can control even sometimes his own nature, what he was naturally born. Your sinful desires are different than my sinful desires. And what I have to fight against is different than what you have to fight against. And no man can control that. But I can make choices. And in the end, I am more a product of my choices than I am my nature or my nurture. And listen, by the way, you start making those choices at an early age. And so I see here this morning not just the correct description, but I see a chosen development in Jacob's life. Yes, he was born with a natural tendency of being a deceiver, a liar, a trickster. Yes, he grew up in an environment that fostered and encouraged that kind of life. But in the end, Jacob becomes his own man. And Jacob begins making his own decisions. And no one compelled Jacob to take advantage of his brother. Look at verse number 29. Jacob sowed pottage, and Esau came from the field, and he was faint. And Esau said to Jacob, feed me, I pray thee, that same red pottage, for I am faint. Therefore was his name called Edom. And Jacob said, hey, I got him now. He's hungry. He's desperate. This is an advantage I've been looking for. Hey, Esau, you want some of my food? Sell me your birthright. Esau probably was like, what? For a bowl of pottage? hungry, aren't you? At the point of fainting, right? What does it matter to you if you're going to die? It's not going to mean anything. So might as well go ahead and sell it to me. And Esau sold Jacob his birthright, which meant his birthright meant that everything that belonged to Isaac would be passed down now to Jacob, not to Esau. He sold it for a bowl of soup, basically. Now, we're not going to get into Esau and his foolishness there, but I want to look at Jacob. He didn't use this occasion and have compassion for his brother. I say, man, he's hungry. He's at the point of death. He's starving. I love my brother. Here's a bowl of soup. No. That wasn't Jacob's nature. That wasn't the nurturing environment that he was in. So Jacob made a choice. Jacob said, now I got him. Now I've got him in a position I can rob him of his birthright. I can take advantage of it. I remember when we were traveling, raising funds, often we would travel late at night, and I had two small kids. Brandon was just a baby. Bryson was just really a toddler. And we'd travel to about 11 or even sometimes 12 o'clock at night. And oftentimes we were going to churches in the South, and I would pull into some hotel somewhere, and I'd say, look, I've been traveling all day. We just need a place to sleep. We don't have a lot of money. How much for a hotel room? And usually they give me a bargain basement price. And I would gladly accept. We'd go in and get a few hours of sleep. And that was Southern hospitality. I remember one time we had a trip up into the Northeast. We went up to Connecticut, Massachusetts, Pennsylvania, New York, that kind of area. And we were coming back late at night through the Poconos. And we stopped at a hotel, and I went in, and I was being honest, I didn't have a lot of money. Just a missionary raising support on the go. Went in and told them I don't have a lot of money. I could almost see them licking their lips. Oh, we got him now. Oh, well, we're having a banquet, or we're having this. The price is normally this, but we're going to have to charge you $125 a night or something. It was like they were like, here's a desperate man in a desperate situation. We're going to take advantage of him. And I said, wow, what a difference between the North and the South and that Southern hospitality. Well, that's the way Jacob was. Jacob didn't look at this as an opportunity to be a blessing, to show compassion and mercy. He looked at this as an opportunity to take advantage. It was a choice he made. And each choice that Jacob is going to make in his life is going to lead him further and further down a sinful path. It's going to foster and develop a sinful nature that he was born with. And he can blame it on his nature if he wants to. And he can blame it on his home life if he wants to. But the end result is this. He made the choices to do what he did. He could have made a choice here that was different. When his mom encouraged him to go in and lie and deceive his dad, he could have made a different choice and said, Mom, I won't do that. When he gets down to Uncle Laban's house and he meets his master, because as much of a liar and deceiver as Jacob was, he was no match for Laban. Laban taught him a thing or two. But in the end, he learned his lessons well and got the advantage of Laban. All along, he made those choices. Don't you see here the power of choice? Life doesn't just happen to you. Sure, we may not be able to choose our nature or our nurture, but we can always choose how we respond to those things. That is the power of choice that you have. And that's the only power and true freedom that you have that nobody can ever take away from you. They can imprison you and throw you in a cell, and throw away the key. But they can't take away your freedom of how to choose to respond to that. You can either choose to respond with bitterness or gladness. At a very early age, we learn to override our nature and our nurture with the power of choice. And choices have consequences. Jacob's choices in regards to Esau is going to bring even further division, so much so that there is going to be so much contention that Jacob is going to have to flee his home. He's going to have to leave in fear of his life. And he's not going to come back again for a long, long time, almost 20 years. All because of his choices. He's going to continue to sow these seeds until Jacob is going to be forced to flee his new home. Because he's going to take advantage of his uncle Laban. And Laban's going to be upset with him and chase him down. All because of choices that Jacob's making. See, you get to choose how you respond to life. I read this and I thought it was good. A secular author wrote this about the power of choices. They said, it is so important to understand that we are all making choices all the time. Even when we choose not to choose, we've still made a choice. It is our choices that determine our experiences. The choices we are making today will show up in our experiences in the future. And unless we are willing to take full responsibility for ourselves and the choices we make, we have no control over our lives. We have been given all the power to create our experiences through choices. But if we believe that outside forces are responsible for our choices, we give away all the power we have. Sometimes making the right choice or even knowing how to make a choice is very difficult. But it is vitally important to understand that you are in charge of your own life if you choose to think for yourself. If you choose not to take charge, you will experience the consequences of that choice. That's a choice in itself. And be simply blown about like a leaf in the wind. Now, you can make your choices in life. And you are going to make your choices in life. And the choices you make are going to determine the outcome of your life. Jacob here makes the first of many choices that are impact his life. In Genesis 27, we read about him stealing his brother's blessing. He's going to choose to deceive his uncle Laban. And Jacob's going to have to flee Laban for fear. There is great power in our choices. Yes, we have a sinful nature. Yes, we live in a fallen environment that seeks to nurture that fallen nature. But in the end, you are responsible for the choices that you make. And if your life's not turning out the way that you wanted it to turn out, most often, the person you can look at to blame is yourself. Quit whining about what other people have done to you, or how life's all been bad for you, or you didn't have the advantages of somebody else, and start making right choices. Take hold of the legacy of your life for yourself. Then I see not just the power of choice, I see the person of choice. No one made Jacob take his brother's birthright. Though his mother encouraged him to dress up like his brother and deceive their nearby father into thinking he was Esau in order to steal his blessing, she didn't make him do it. Jacob made these choices himself. And in the end, no one is to blame for the experiences in your life but yourself. You are the product of your own choices. Can I tell you, that goes all the way back to the very beginning. Look with me in Genesis chapter number 4. We read about two brothers there. They too were different as night and day. One was named Cain, one was named Abel. One brought an offering that was pleasing unto the Lord, and one did not. Hear what God had to say to Cain. In Genesis chapter 4, verse number 7. If, that's a condition, that's a choice. If thou doest well, shall thou not be accepted? Cain, look, if you choose what is right, do you think I'm going to reject you for that? I'm only rejecting your sacrifice because you've chosen to do what's wrong. It's your choice. You can either choose to do right or you can choose to do wrong. It's up to you. But whatever you choose, you're going to have to live with the consequences because it's your choice. If thou choosest to do well, shall you not be accepted? If you do what's right, I'm going to love you. I'm going to accept you. You're going to be my child. But, he says, if thou doest not well, sin lieth at the door. You know what he's saying? You've got a fallen nature, Cain. It's always there under the surface. It's always there ready to be unleashed and uncaged. If you don't make right choices, that nature is going to come to life and it's going to do something that's regrettable. It's going to get out. Listen, you have a fallen nature. It's always there under the surface. We live in a fallen world that's always encouraging us to do wrong. But your life will be determined by the choices you make. If thou doest well, God's going to bless you. God's going to help you. God's going to accept you. If thou doest not well, sin's always lying under the surface, ready to come to life, ready to destroy us, ready to hurt us. The choice is ours. I want you to see one last thing here. So we've looked at all the bad stuff. But I want you to see a changed disposition. All of this is going to change for Jacob in one night. Now, it's not going to happen at Bethel. I truly believe Bethel is Jacob's salvation experience. But just because a person gets saved, that doesn't mean they start living for the Lord. And it doesn't mean they always start following God's word. Jacob at Bethel, on his way to Uncle Laban's, he met God and God became his God. I believe that's his salvation experience. But he still had that old nature, and so do you. You may be here this morning and you say, well, I'm saved. Yeah, but you still got that old nature. You still live in a fallen world. And you have to decide, I'm going to please God, I'm going to please self. All of this is going to come to a head for Jacob in one night. In one night, everything's going to change. Look with me in Genesis chapter number 32. You know, no matter how much we desire to do right, we still find ourselves doing wrong. Isn't that what Paul's saying in Romans 7? He's saying, I want to do right, but then I end up doing wrong. And I don't want to do wrong, and then I end up doing it. You know what Paul's saying in Romans 7? What I really need is a new nature. Because this old nature is just not working for me. I need to be able to break with my legacy of the past and discover a new destiny and a new legacy. All Jacob's life, he had been a swindler. He had been a cheat, a liar, a deceiver. That had been not just his nature. It had been nurtured in him. It had not just been his nature and his nurture. It had been the product of his own choosing. He chose to be exactly what he was named. Now he's on his way back home after almost 20 years of being gone. He's got 2 wives and 2 concubines and a bunch of kids. He's got servants and he's got cattle and livestock. And they're moving as a big caravan across the wilderness. And he gets word his brother's coming out to meet him. Well, he's not alone. He's got 400 armed men coming with him. And Jacob knows how he left things. And he's probably thinking, we're in big trouble. If Esau didn't mean me any harm, why is he bringing all these armed guards with him? Why is he bringing all these armed soldiers with him? It put fear in Jacob's heart, and he began making plans in case Esau meant him harm. But that same night, one of the most interesting encounters in all of Scripture took place. Jacob, restless with worry, gets up in the middle of the night, sends his wives across a brook, and he's alone on the other side by himself. And while he's alone on the other side by himself, he meets a man. Maybe he thought he was an intruder. Maybe he thought he was from Esau. We don't know why or how he came across this man. But for some reason, he gets into a wrestling match with this man. We'll pick up in verse number 24. Genesis 32, verse number 24. And Jacob was left alone. There wrestled a man with him until the breaking of the day. It was an all-night wrestling match. And when he saw that he prevailed not against him, he touched the hollow of his thigh. And the hollow of Jacob's thigh was out of joint as he wrestled with him. And he said, Let me go, for the day breaketh. And he said, I will not let thee go, except thou bless me. And he said unto him, What is thy name? And he said, Jacob. And he said, Thy name shall no more be called no more Jacob, but Israel. For as a prince thou hast power with God and with men, and hast prevailed. And Jacob asked him and said, Tell me, I pray thee, thy name. And he said, Wherefore it is that thou dost ask my name? And he blessed him there. And Jacob called the name of the place Peniel, for I have seen God face to face, and my life is preserved. Jacob wrestled with what I think I can prove, a pre-incarnate Jesus Christ. He got into a wrestling match with Jesus. Notice he did it alone. Because if you're going to change your life, mama's not going to be able to change you. Daddy's not going to be able to change you. And pastor's not going to be able to change you. And your wife's not going to be able to change you. And your husband's not going to be able to change you. And your kids are not going to be able to change you. You're going to have to make the decision to change with you alone in Christ. He gets in a wrestling match, and Rachel couldn't change Jacob. Laban couldn't change Jacob. Mom and Dad couldn't change Jacob, but Jesus could change Jacob. And two things I just want you to notice, I'll be done. He got a new walk. He got a new walk. Now you say it was painful. Absolutely. You ever had something knocked out of joint? It's a painful thing. The Bible says there at the end of that chapter, in verse number 32, yeah. Therefore the children of Israel eat not the sinew which shrank, which is upon the hollow of the thigh unto this day, because he touched the hollow of Jacob's thigh in the sinew that shrank. Jacob never walked the same again. This was a life-changing event in his life. From then on out, he hobbled. You say, well, that doesn't sound very pleasant. Can I tell you, folks, if you're really going to change, God's sometimes going to have to break you. God's going to have to get you down. He's going to have to break you from what you are, so that He can make you into something better. And yes, it's going to be painful and it's going to hurt. And God often and perhaps always has to do this in our life. Jeremiah 18:4 says, "And that vessel that he made of clay was marred in the hand of the potter. So he made it again another vessel, as seemeth good to the potter to make it." God uses broken things. And I don't think a man can be used of God. And I don't think a person can truly serve God and walk with God until God breaks that person. You may be saved here this morning, but if God hasn't broken you, you're not going to really be able to walk with God and serve Him. Often God's got to break our old nature. He's got to break our will. He's got to break our natural dispositions to mold us and make us into something that He wants us to be. And from this moment on in Jacob's life, he is never going to walk the same. He is going to be a broken man. Now, we might look at what happened to him as a detriment, as a handicap. But I think Jacob would look back on that night in his life and say, that was the best thing that ever happened to me. That made me into a better man. And what will it take in your life for God to break you of your sinful disposition, of your natural habits? What must He touch in your life and bring out of joint to mold you and make you into the person He wants you to be? Jacob, as I said, I believe was already a believer in God, and we can go back to what happened to him in Bethel on his journey. But being a believer doesn't mean that you're a disciple or follower of Christ. He may give us a new nature upon salvation, that doesn't mean that we're willing to follow it. Far too often, we're content to walk after the flesh, to walk like the old man, until God breaks us and we don't have any choice but to walk after the Spirit and walk out like the new man. For ye are yet carnal, whereas there is among you envy and strife and divisions. Are ye not carnal and walk as men? This I say then, walk in the Spirit, and you shall not fulfill the lusts of the flesh. If we live in the Spirit, let us also walk in the Spirit. Salvation is just the beginning of the process of Christ-likeness. It's just the start. We're not really going to be on the path until we start having a different walk. But he didn't just get a new walk. He got a new name. All Jacob's life, you can go back and study it, all Jacob's life, he ran away from who he was. When he went into his nearly blind father, he asked him, "Who are you?" He said, "I'm Esau." Lie. He didn't want to own up to, "No, I'm the liar. I'm the deceiver. I'm the usurper. I'm the underminer. I'm the self-willed overthrower." But here on this night, wrestling with Jesus, Jesus asked him, "Who are you?" Jacob said, "I'm a sinner. I'm a liar. I'm a deceiver. I've been that all my life. I've been that since I was born. That's who I am." And Jesus said, "No more. No more. From this day forward, you won't be called liar. Jacob, no more are you going to be called deceiver. I got something better for you to be called. How about Prince with God? How about being called God's child? Doesn't that sound better? Let's change that. Let's give you a new name. Let's call you God's child. You're here today and you use the name Christian. God changed your name too. Why do you call yourself and not live like it? Live up to it. Live up to your new name. You say, "Pastor, you don't know me. I'm a liar. I'm a deceiver. I'm a lazy, good for nothing." No. That's who you used to be. Today you're God's child. Why don't you start living like it? Why don't you start living up to that? Do you know what, Brother June? You study the life of Jacob. From this point on, he never went back to his old ways. He never went back to lying and deceiving and tricking people. He was a different man. He had a new walk. He had a new name. He had a new legacy that he was living up to. He said, I'm Jacob no longer. Call me Israel. Call me child of God. You are the product of a tainted legacy. Wherefore by one man sin entered into the world, and death by sin, and so death passed upon all men, for that all have sinned. But I'm telling you this morning, you can choose a different legacy. You can say, I don't want to be that any longer. I want to be a Christian. I want to change my name. I want to change my walk. For as by one man's disobedience many were made sinners, so by the obedience of one many shall be made righteous. That can be you this morning. With our heads bowed and our eyes closed, and Don's coming to the piano. You're here this morning and you say, Pastor, I know I was given a bad legacy. Maybe in truth, maybe you were given a bum deal in life. Maybe you didn't have a great home. Maybe you've had a rough life. Maybe you come from false religion. Maybe you